Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our next broadcast of Knowledge as a Service series to provide technical experts to our customers where we'll discuss interesting topics and emerging technologies that might help your organization or maybe just that you are curious about. I'm Shannon Gillenwater. I'm Director of Technology for Mobius Partners. I've been working in the technology solutions to clients for over 20 years with a focus in networking and security. And this morning, I am joined by my colleague, Kyle Husted, and good morning to you, sir.
Thanks, Shannon. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Kyle Husted, Solutions Architect here at Mobius. Been in the industry for about 25 years now, working in a variety of aspects from client to vendor to partner. And my focus is mainly around data center and software-defined data center. Appreciate it.
Fun stuff. For those of you new with us, Mobius Partners is a local solution provider in your backyard, but we have a global reach helping our clients with their journey across the ever-changing landscape of IT. And today, we're here to talk with you about passwordless logins. While it might be a mouthful to say, it is a little refreshing that we finally have a new technology that isn't just another acronym, and also maybe a little different in that it's a new technology that's actually referencing the old technology it's meant to replace. And I'd like to start by saying that with a significant number of the so-called hacks that we hear about in the news actually weren't hacks at all. The bad actor didn't break in, they just simply logged in, which accounts for about 60 to 80% of the data breaches that we're dealing with today. Sometimes it's just that it was a password, it was easy to guess. Sometimes it's from phishing and social engineering where the victim actually helps the hacker compromise their account. I mean, it's currently one of the most frequent problems that we're dealing with these days, especially with a lot more of the work from home status that we have with organizations. Now, of course, we all heard about MFA, and almost everybody is using that in some way already.
Yeah, MFA or multi-factor authentication, if we want to break out the acronym, is really, you know, in a way to log in using more than one factor. Now, let me break that down a little bit. The ways to authenticate include who you are, what you know, and what you have, right? So those are types of factors for proving who you are. And, you know, everybody's used to having a password, which is something. And then there's also can be a fingerprint or a retinal scanner, or they can send a code to your phone or some other device that you need to know to click on and say yes. Using more than one of those factors is what we refer to as MFA. So with passwordless technology passwordless logins, is MFA going away already? I mean, we just kind of got it for a lot of places.
No, the concept of password logins doesn't mean the end of MFA. MFA actually is an integral part of the passwordless login strategy. But MFA on its own has shown to be still highly susceptible to social engineering techniques, where an individual convinces somebody they've already been a victim of a hack and they convince them to divulge the passcode from a one-time password login that was sent to their phone, for example, and they trick them into giving it to them to prove it's really them or that they really have their cell phone in their possession. When really that was the one-time passcode that was for resetting their account password, right? So the victim didn't have to guess their password or break it. They got to set it to whatever they wanted, and now they're the only ones that have it. And so that's going to come from with that's another phishing scheme. So, you know, MFA definitely still helps with that, but it is subject to phishing schemes. But let's talk a little bit about the technology behind passwordless logins. In and of itself, it isn't a new single piece of technology that you're going to go out and buy and then install it to replace all the other things that you use for MFA and login today. Passwordless logins is really a strategy that combines several of those existing authentication techniques, plus one new key piece of unifying technology that really brings them all together so that they can complement each other. So we talked about the various ways that we can authenticate somebody, right? Something you are, something you have, something you know. So that gives us more than one factor. But one of the challenges is that there's still ways to access those things and take advantage of them. And we really need some way that removes the human factor out of it and makes it more about physical things. And so when we think about bringing MFA and doing multiple factors, that usually means starting with a user's password. And so we're all used to that one. That's always been the first factor, and we're used to that. And that's really what we're trying to get rid of. But MFA always starts with a user password and then does what we call step up to an additional factor to ensure that it's really them.
Okay, yeah, I could see that. But like you said, we still haven't talked about any new technologies. Is that still coming up?
Absolutely. So Passwordless does take advantage of authentication channels that we have today, but it brings them all together with a set of protocols that's referred to as FIDO. And I know I started off by saying, we weren't talking about new acronyms, but actually FIDO isn't the actual technology itself. It's the name of the alliance that's putting all this together for us, and it stands for Fast Identity Online Alliance. And it includes all the major players out in there, both in the cloud and web and app and operating system markets. So they're all participating in this and trying to drive us forward to having no more password logging in, even though we will still have multi-factor. We're removing password as one of those because it is the weakest one that we really have available to us. And it's actually the most problematic. If you look at service desk tickets out there for large enterprises, a significant amount of tickets are for people who forgot their password, or maybe according to them, they didn't forget it, but for whatever reason, they don't know it. And they lock out their account, they need to unlock it and then change their password. And so passwords just have shown to be very problematic in the operational environments. FIDO is working on getting rid of those, and they bring together all these different authentication methods, and they authenticate you, but without having created a password for your account. And so they'll use these combined methods to create security keys that represent your right to access some application or data, and that the security keys are created on your behalf when you create your account, but you as a user never even see or know what these keys are. They are stored for you on your device in some way in a secure method. And that's the whole point, is you can't steal my password if I don't know it. I don't have a password. I have a security key that is being sent on my behalf when I've passed the proper steps to make it available. So that's the other thing that FIDO gives us. It's a set of protocols to facilitate that authentication session and handle the key exchange so that application developers can easily include these new authentication methods without knowing everything about which method you're using, or allow for negotiation of the strongest method between two entities during authentication. Today, the most widely used protocols for that are UAS, U2S, and WebAuth. U2S itself is mainly focused on second factor authentication after a password, which, as we just discussed, isn't where we want things to stop. And so its successor, U2S, was created to make it accessible more to mobile devices. And then that third one, WebAuthn, which more generically most people refer to as FIDO2, the number 2, is the second standard release from that alliance. And really, WebAuthn combines those previous two into one more useful protocol that gets the best of both worlds.
Okay, all right. So we've talked about, the multi-factors that you could use, the protocols that are being used. It's still a little nebulous and complex. So maybe it would help everybody if, like, you could give an example of what a passwordless session would look like for an end user.
All right, sounds like a good idea. Let's say I want to log into my work email. So I open up Outlook on my laptop. Now, of course, this needs authentication, right, to make sure it's really me using my email. And in the MFA world today, we see this now. Like, I get a push notification to my phone, and let's say we're using Microsoft Authenticator on the phones, which a lot of people use. So it pushes a notification to my phone, but I haven't typed in a password yet, and I'm not going to. Instead, to access the authenticator on my phone, I'm going to be required to use my thumbprint scanner to access and approve the Microsoft Authenticator. And then via Bluetooth, my phone and laptop have to see each other, which means it knows for sure we are both in the same room together, right? I'm actually the one using my phone and the laptop because they can see each other. The Bluetooth or NFC could be another way to provide that near field communications. And so using the FIDO protocols, my unique strong security keys that were stored on my mobile phone are sent to the email system to authenticate my session. And there we are, I'm in. And I have my email, but I never had a password. I just opened up my phone, gave it my thumbprint, and then via Bluetooth, the two devices saw each other. So with a high probability, we can say that's really me, and I'm really the one there using that laptop.
Okay. So if the security keys or the unique security keys are on my phone, won't that make it difficult to say, like, authenticate for multiple devices? Let's say I have an iPad or a phone, or let's say my phone gets replaced. What happens then?
Yeah, that is a good point, and that is one of the challenges that we're still dealing with today. So FIDO is working on it. They are working on another standard to provide what they call roaming authenticators as another option. And therefore, instead of my unique security keys that are mine being stored on just my mobile device and laptop, for example. Instead, they're stored in a centralized platform that is a trusted source for my authentication keys. And then using the combined factors we just talked about earlier, those will be used to make sure it's really me. And then once I've been authenticated to be the person I say I am, then the security key is sent on my behalf to the application, website or whatever it is that you were trying to get access to. And once the roaming authenticators are in place and accessible to everyone, that'll be the final step to provide true wide-scale adoption of the passwordless login approach. So in closing, here's what we recommend to get you started on your passwordless journey. First, think about picking which modes of authentication work best for you, which is obviously going to be dependent upon your work environment and your specific use cases. As we talked about earlier, there's a range of options available from fingerprints to retinal scans and magic links and hardware tokens. So you have to figure out which ones are really going to fit your environment. And then you also have to consider how many factors are necessary for your protecting your data and the way your employees work. But for sure, it's recommended to do using at least 2 authentication factors with passwordless, and in some cases 3. But it's happening all in the background, so we're not making it more difficult for our users to utilize. The next thing to look at is, now that you've got that part, so now which hardware and software things do I need to purchase for my environment? You may have to, for example, purchase biometric scanners. You may have to provide some agents to load on devices. So you figure out what you're going to need to implement your chosen approach to passwordless logins. And then lastly, create your policies and begin provisioning your users. So you've got to get people registered in the systems, and if you're using facial recognition, right, you've got to get those scans done. So you can start actually putting it to use out in your environment. And one of the other things I really like about passwordless logins, in closing, is that this is one of the first times where we're actually making things more secure for the business and our end users, but we're not making it more difficult for them to utilize. There's always been the equation in the security realm of the more secure you make something, the more difficult it is to use, and vice versa. So it's always been a trade-off where you're trying to make it more secure, but not make it too difficult for end users to access. And then this is one of the few times where we're actually making things more secure and easier, right? So it's a win for everybody. All right, with that, I'll wrap things up. Thanks for your time, and hope you heard some useful information today. And thanks again to my partner, Kyle.
Thank you for joining our Knowledge as a Service podcast. If you have ideas for future topics, please email info@mobiuspartners.com.